Welcome to Wildlife for Sleep, a place where ancient oceans breathe slowly, where shadows drift beneath the waves, and where stories are told not to awaken the mind, but to gently quiet it. If these facts help you relax or slowly drift into sleep, please like the video, subscribe to Wildlife for Sleep, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps this channel continue creating peaceful, slow science inspired sleep documentaries. Now settle into a comfortable position, let your breathing soften, and allow the surface world to fade away. Tonight we descend into the deepest waters of the sea. The term Leviathan, derived from ancient Hebrew lore and later woven into the mythological fabric of numerous cultures, has long been synonymous with monstrous, primeval chaos. However, transcending its mythographic status, the name has been formally adopted by paleontology to designate one of the most formidable macro-predators to ever evolve in Earth's oceans, Leviathan melville. This taxonomic designation, honoring both the biblical beast and the author of Moby Dick, Herman Melville, belies a creature of staggering biological reality, not fantasy. The holotype specimen, discovered in the Miocene-aged Pisco Formation of coastal Peru and first described in 2010, represents a catastrophic apex predator whose existence reshapes our understanding of cetacean evolution and marine trophic dynamics during the Neogene period. The primary fossil material consists of a massive, 3-meter-long skull, complete with robust mandibles, and an impressive suite of teeth, the largest of which measure over 36 centimeters in length and 12 centimeters in diameter at the root, rivaling those of Tyrannosaurus rex in absolute size and exceeding them in volume. This dentition is immediately diagnostic, unlike the keratinous baleen plates of its modern relative, the sperm whale, Pfister macrocephalus. Leviathan possessed a full, heterodont set of functional teeth in both its upper and lower jaws. These teeth are deeply rooted in exceptionally thick, vascularized maxillary and dentary bones, exhibiting pronounced enamel caps and distinct wear patterns indicative of intense, repetitive shearing forces. The cranium itself, while sharing a general pfisteroid shape, characterized by a pronounced supracranial basin, is constructed with a robustness that suggests immense musculoskeletal attachments. The zygomatic arches are sprawling and thick, providing anchor points for a masseteric musculature of unparalleled power among cetaceans. The temporal fossae, the windows in the skull through which the temporalis muscles, the primary jaw-closing engines, originate, are enormous, suggesting a bite force estimated through comparative biomechanical modeling to exceed 16,000 kilonewtons, a value sufficient to inflict catastrophic trauma on even the most well-armored prey. The mandibular condyles, The pivots upon which the jaws articulate are broad and set wide apart, stabilizing the jaw against lateral torsion during violent subduing maneuvers. Perhaps most strikingly, the skull reveals clear evidence of the anatomy required for echolocation. The presence of a large, asymmetric spermaceti organ housed in the supracranial basin is inferred from the cranial morphology, including the presence of dense, concave maxillary plates that would have served as acoustic mirrors. This suggests Leviathan was not merely a brutish bite force specialist, but a sophisticated hunter that likely integrated biological sonar to locate, track, and disorient large, deep-diving prey in the often light-limited pelagic zone. The postcranial skeleton, while less completely known, can be extrapolated from related physteroids. A total body length of 13.5 to 17.5 meters is conservatively estimated, with a robust, muscular physique built for explosive acceleration rather than sustained cruising. The flippers were likely broad and powerful for maneuvering, while the fluke, the primary locomotor organ, would have generated tremendous thrust. This anatomical portrait, pieced together from fragmentary but compelling fossil evidence, depicts Leviathan melville not as a slow scavenging giant, but as a highly specialized, acoustically guided hypercarnivore, an active hunter whose very morphology was an arms race against the defenses of its contemporaneous megafauna. To comprehend the evolutionary pressures that forged Leviathan, one must reconstruct the vanished world of the Middle to late Miocene oceans, approximately 12 to 13 million years before present. This epoch was characterized by a climatic optimum followed by a gradual cooling trend, leading to the expansion of polar ice sheets and a restructuring of oceanic circulation. These changes catalyzed profound shifts in marine productivity and, consequently, in the composition of apex predator guilds. The Miocene seas were a theater of gigantism, populated by a daunting array of massive marine vertebrates, each locked in a perpetual co-evolutionary struggle. The most significant of these, and the likely primary prey source for Leviathan, were the baleen whales, Mysticeti, which had by this time undergone their own explosive radiation into colossal filter feeders. Species such as Cetothurium and early representatives of the rorquals, Balænopteridae, and right whales, Balænidae, plied the oceans, their vast, energy-rich bodies representing the ultimate trophic prize. However, these whales were not defenseless. Their primary evolutionary response to predation pressure was a dramatic increase in body size, a strategy that makes an animal harder to subdue and increases the energy threshold a predator must meet to make an attack profitable. This trend toward gigantism in mysticetes, however, was matched step for step by the evolution of corresponding offensive capabilities in their macropredators. This period saw the rise of the giant shark Otodus megalodon, with its serrated, blade-like teeth, adapted for slicing through thick blubber and muscle. Leviathan represents the cetacean answer to this same ecological opportunity. Its weaponization diverged radically from the shark's. Instead of a mouthful of cutting blades, it evolved a mechanism for seizing, immobilizing, and dismembering large, struggling prey through sheer blunt force trauma and mechanical disruption. Its teeth functioned not as scalpels but as pitons and hydraulic rams, capable of crushing bone, shearing flippers, and rupturing vital organs. The coexistence of Leviathan and megalodon in this time and place, the Peruvian Miocene, creates a unique paleoecological scenario. A single ecosystem supporting two sympatric, multi-ton super predators occupying analogous trophic positions. Niche partitioning is therefore a critical question. It is hypothesized that Leviathan, as an endothermic, intelligent, and social mammal capable of deep, prolonged dives and sophisticated echolocation, may have targeted different prey profiles or hunting grounds than the ectothermic megalodon. Leviathan might have specialized in attacking the cranial and thoracic regions of large whales, using its sonar to precisely target vital areas in low light conditions, while Megalodon may have employed a more generalized slicing strategy, often focusing on the softer abdominal regions or scavenging. This predator duality would have imposed intense, multi-vector selective pressure on the Mysticete whales, driving their evolution toward ever greater size, increased calf protection behaviors, and possibly even alterations in migratory patterns. The Miocene Ocean was thus a dynamic, high-stakes arena where the evolutionary innovations of one clade, the gigantism of baleen whales, directly fueled the morphological extremes of two independent predator lineages, culminating in one of the most formidable biting machines in vertebrate history. The hunting strategy of Leviathan melville can be reconstructed through a synthesis of its functional anatomy, modern cetacean behavior, and forensic analysis of potential prey remains. The foundational element is its dentition. Each tooth is a masterpiece of biological engineering, designed not for holding but for penetrating and fracturing. The enamel, while present, is relatively thin compared to the immense bulk of dentine beneath, creating a structure that is resistant to catastrophic failure under high compressive loads. The tooth roots are deeply implanted in alveoli with reinforced bony walls, and the teeth themselves interlocked when the jaws closed, creating a continuous, devastatingly strong basket from which even the most streamlined prey could not easily escape. This is in stark contrast to the modern sperm whale, whose lower teeth are non-functional in feeding, and the great white shark, whose teeth are designed to cut and slice but are frequently lost and replaced. Leviathan's dentition was a permanent, irreplaceable arsenal, suggesting a hunting style that minimized risk to these critical assets. The biomechanics of the bite indicate a powerful, precision shear. The jaw muscles, reconstructed from their massive bony attachments, would have allowed for both an incredibly powerful static bite and, crucially, a rapid jaw closure. This combination suggests an attack sequence beginning with a high-speed approach, likely from below or from the side, to avoid the tail fluke of a large whale. Using its echolocation to navigate and target, Leviathan would have delivered an initial, incapacitating bite aimed at a critical anatomical region. Potential targets included the thorax, to collapse the lungs and damage the heart, the base of the flippers or fluke, to cripple locomotion, or the mandibles and jaw joints of other predatory whales, to disarm a potential competitor or dangerous prey item. Following this initial strike, the hunting strategy may have involved a period of physical restraint and drowning, a behavior observed in modern orcas, Orcinus orca, when hunting large whales. The social behavior of Leviathan remains speculative, but is informed by the highly social nature of all extant large odontocetes, including sperm whales and orcas. It is plausible, perhaps even probable, that Leviathan hunted in coordinated pods. A social structure would confer multiple advantages: the ability to locate and herd prey more efficiently, the capacity to tackle prey items significantly larger than any single individual, such as a 20-meter mysticete whale, and cooperative defense against other mega-predators like O. megalodon. Pod members could work in concert to separate a calf from its mother, exhaust a large adult by taking turns attacking, or defend a kill from scavengers. The presence of the spermaceti organ, homologous to that in the modern sperm whale, adds another layer of sophistication. Beyond its role in echolocation, this organ, a massive structure filled with a wax ester called spermaceti, may have served as a buoyancy-controlled device for deep diving and as a resonating chamber for powerful acoustic signals. Leviathan could have used biological sonar not only for navigation and prey detection, but also to emit disorienting, high-intensity blast clicks to stun or panic prey at close range, a tactic theorized for modern sperm whales. This integration of immense physical power, specialized dentition, social intelligence, and advanced sensory biology positions Leviathan not as a simple brute, but as arguably the most complex and adaptively refined macropredatory mammal ever to exist, a pinnacle of marine tetrapod evolution whose ecological role has never been fully replicated. The disappearance of Leviathan melville from the fossil record by the end of the Miocene or early Pliocene, approximately 5–6 million years ago, represents a significant extinction event within the marine apex predator guild. Its demise was not an isolated incident, but part of a broader faunal turnover that also saw the decline and eventual extinction of Otodus megalodon and numerous species of large mysticete whales. The causes are multifaceted, rooted in profound planetary change. The primary driver was likely a shift in global climate and oceanography. The closure of the Central American Seaway due to the uplift of the Isthmus of Panama around 3–4 million years ago radically altered global thermohaline circulation, leading to the strengthening of the Gulf Stream, increased upwelling in certain regions, and a general cooling and redistribution of nutrients. This climatic upheaval triggered cascading effects through marine food webs. A critical factor may have been the impact on prey availability. Many of the large, slow-breeding mysticete whales that formed the caloric foundation for Leviathan's existence may have suffered population collapses or undergone adaptive shifts. They may have evolved even more efficient migratory patterns to follow plankton blooms, grown too large for even Leviathan to tackle profitably, or their nursery grounds may have been disrupted by changing coastlines and temperatures. Furthermore, the cooling oceans may have preferentially favored the more energy-efficient ectothermic megalodon for a time, but ultimately proved detrimental to both giants. For Leviathan, as a large, endothermic mammal, the metabolic demands were colossal. A sustained reduction in the density of large, fatty prey items, each hunt being a high-risk, high-energy endeavor, would have pushed the species below a viable population threshold. Additionally, the rise of new, more agile and social predators like the ancestors of modern orcas may have introduced heightened competition for a shrinking resource base. Orcas, while smaller, possess superior intelligence, social flexibility, and hunting coordination, and can subsist on a wider variety of prey, from fish to seals to other whales. This generalist strategy may have conferred a decisive advantage in an unstable, changing world. The extinction of Leviathan left a void in the marine ecosystem that has never been filled by an analogous creature. The modern sperm whale, its closest living relative, retreated into a different niche entirely, specializing in hunting deep-water cephalopods like the giant squid, utilizing suction feeding and a radically modified dentition. The killer whale, though a formidable pack hunter of other marine mammals, lacks the individual size and specialized bone-crushing dentition to take on the very largest baleen whales with the same singular, catastrophic efficiency. Thus, Leviathan stands as a unique experiment in evolution, the ultimate combination of mammalian intelligence and sociality, with reptilian-scale bite force and dentition. Its fossilized skull is more than a collection of ancient bones. It is a testament to a specific, vanished moment in Earth's history when the oceans were ruled not by one, but by multiple, independently evolved monarchs of unparalleled power, and where the evolutionary pathways of cetaceans produced a raptorial giant that blurred the line between mammalian grace and primordial ferocity. Its legacy endures not in a descendant, but in the profound demonstration of evolutionary possibility, a reminder that the narrative of life on Earth is replete with chapters of astonishing, and often terrifying, creativity since closed. The phylogenetic placement of Leviathan melville within the order Cetacea, and more specifically the suborder Odontoceti, toothed whales, is a critical exercise in understanding its evolutionary origins and its exceptional divergence from related lineages. Cetacean phylogeny, reconstructed through cladistic analysis of both morphological characters and, increasingly, molecular data from extant species, reveals a deep evolutionary split between the Mysticeti, baleen whales, and Odontoceti, occurring approximately 34-36 million years ago during the Oligocene epoch. The odontocetes are united by several synapomorphies, most notably the cranial asymmetry associated with echolocation and the presence of a melon, a fatty acoustic lens used in focusing sound beams. Leviathan is firmly nested within the superfamily Physteroidea, which contains two extant families: the Physterid, the sperm whale, Physter macrocephalus, and the Kogiidae, the pygmy and dwarf sperm whales, Kogia spp. The Physteroids are characterized by several distinctive cranial features, including a large, dish-shaped facial basin on the skull's dorsal surface, which houses the spermaceti organ, and a narrow, underslung lower jaw. The evolutionary path leading to Leviathan, however, represents a radical departure from the trajectory taken by its modern relatives. The ancestral Physteroid is believed to have been a smaller macroraptorial predator, with heterodont dentition suitable for seizing sizable prey. From this generalized ancestor, two highly specialized lineages emerged. One lineage, leading to modern Physter and Kogia, underwent a dramatic shift in feeding ecology during the Miocene, concomitant with the exploitation of a deep water niche. This involved the reduction or loss of functional upper teeth, the refinement of the spermaceti organ for deep diving and acoustic prey stunning, and the adaptation of the oral cavity for suction feeding on soft-bodied cephalopods. The other lineage, exemplified by Leviathan and other fossil genera such as the slightly older Acrophyseter from Peru, represents a different adaptive peak. Instead of abandoning raptorial feeding, they hyper-specialized for it. This lineage amplified the ancestral traits. The teeth became not only retained but massively enlarged and rooted. The jaw musculature and cranial robusticity increased exponentially. And the spermaceti organ, while present, appears to have been integrated into a hunting strategy targeting large, bony vertebrates rather than soft squid. This dichotomy illustrates a fundamental principle of adaptive radiation: the exploitation of divergent ecological opportunities from a common ancestor. Leviathan's evolution was likely driven by the abundant, high-value resource of large marine mammal prey in the productive Miocene seas, while the lineage leading to modern sperm whales capitalized on the unexploited biomass of the deep scattering layer, a resource requiring different, but no less complex, morphological and physiological adaptations. The discovery of Leviathan thus fills a major gap in the Physteroid family tree, revealing that the modern suction-feeding sperm whale is not the primitive or only apex predator form of the group, but rather the survivor of a once more diverse clade that included the most formidable macropredatory whale to ever evolve. The geographic and stratigraphic context of Leviathan's discovery is as significant as the fossil itself. The specimen was unearthed from the Pisco Formation, a Cenozoic sedimentary sequence exposed along the arid coast of southern Peru, primarily in the Ica Desert. This formation is recognized globally as a conservat lagerstätte, a deposit of exceptional fossil preservation that provides an unparalleled window into a complete marine ecosystem from the late Miocene to early Pliocene. The rocks of the Pisco Formation comprise diatomaceous cherts, tuffs, sandstones, and siltstones, indicating deposition in a coastal marine environment, likely a protected bay or embayment with significant silica input from prolific diatom blooms. The exceptional preservation, including articulated skeletons, baleen impressions, and even stomach contents in some specimens, is attributed to a combination of rapid burial by volcanic ash and fine sediments, coupled with anoxic bottom conditions that inhibited scavenging and bacterial decay. This unique taphonomic setting has yielded a breathtakingly comprehensive fauna. Alongside Leviathan, the formation has produced fossils of the giant shark Otodus megalodon, numerous species of baleen whales, including ancestors of rorquals and right whales, seals, aquatic sloths, thalassocnus, marine crocodiles, seabirds, and an immense diversity of fish. This single fossil assemblage allows for the direct reconstruction of an entire food web, with Leviathan positioned definitively at its apex. The co-occurrence of Leviathan and O-megalodon in the same beds is not merely coincidental, it is ecological testimony. It confirms that these two super predators were not only contemporaries, but shared the same hunting grounds. The Peruvian coast during the late Miocene was evidently a region of extraordinary marine productivity, fueled by the precursors of the modern Humboldt current system. This cold, nutrient-rich upwelling would have supported vast biomasses of phytoplankton, which in turn sustained large populations of zooplankton, fish, and the Mysticete whales that fed on them. This concentration of prey created an ecological hotspot, capable of supporting multiple high-metabolism apex predators. The paleobiogeographic distribution of related Leviathan-like physteroids, with fossils reported from Chile, Australia, and South Africa, suggests this lineage was cosmopolitan in warm to temperate oceans worldwide. However, the Pisco Formation provides the richest and most detailed context, transforming Leviathan from an isolated biological curiosity into a central character in a complex, dynamic, and fully populated ancient marine world. The ongoing excavation and study of this formation continue to refine our understanding of its paleoecology, offering nuanced insights into predator-prey ratios, potential competitive interactions, and the environmental parameters that fostered such a concentration of marine megafauna. Quantifying the predatory apparatus of Leviathan requires rigorous comparative biomechanical analysis, moving beyond descriptive anatomy to modeled functional performance. The primary metric of interest is bite force, a key determinant of feeding ecology in carnivores. Estimating bite force in an extinct animal involves constructing digital or physical models based on osteological correlates of muscle architecture. For Leviathan, researchers have used the dimensions of the temporal fossa, indicating temporalis muscle size, and the mandibular lever arm mechanics, drawing comparisons with extant taxa whose in vivo bite forces have been measured, such as crocodilians, large carnivorans, and the great white shark. These models, while necessarily incorporating assumptions about muscle physiology and fiber orientation, converge on staggering estimates. Conservative calculations place Leviathan's bite force in the realm of 16,000 to 20,000 kilonewtons at the tips of the principal mandibular teeth. To contextualize this, the highest reliably measured bite force in any extant animal is approximately 16,000 kilonewtons for the saltwater crocodile, Crocodilus porosus. But this is delivered by a much shorter snout and smaller teeth. Leviathan's force was applied through long, deeply rooted teeth acting as levers, generating immense pressure and creating a unique puncture-crush dynamic. This places it at the uppermost extremity of the bite force spectrum for any vertebrate, terrestrial or marine, rivaled only by the largest tyrannosaurids and exceeding the estimated bite force of O. megalodon, which, while immense, was optimized for slicing rather than crushing. The functional analog for Leviathan's feeding mechanism is not found in any modern whale, but perhaps more closely in prehistoric archosaurs. Its dentition and jaw mechanics bear a convergent resemblance to those of theropod dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex, and intriguingly, to the extinct, gigantic sperm whale relative Basilosaurus, although on a vastly magnified scale. Another analog may be the Pleistocene saber-toothed cat Smilodon, which also possessed specialized, hypertrophied dentition for delivering deep, debilitating wounds to large prey. However, Smilodon's canines were fragile and adapted for a precise shear, whereas Leviathan's teeth were robust, omnidirectional tools for bludgeoning. The skull's ability to withstand the immense stresses of such a bite is equally remarkable. Finite element analysis, FEA, a computational technique used to model stress distribution in complex structures, when applied to a 3D model of the Leviathan skull, would likely show high levels of stress concentrated around the tooth alveoli and zygomatic arches, areas that are, in fact, massively reinforced with thick, dense bone. This indicates an exquisitely adapted structure where strength is precisely allocated to manage the self-inflicted loads of its own bite. This combination of extreme force generation, specialized stress-resistant architecture, and unique tooth morphology created a biological weapon system without parallel in the marine mammalian realm, a testament to the relentless optimization of evolution under the intense selective pressures of hunting mega prey. Beyond its physical armament, Leviathan was almost certainly equipped with a sophisticated sensory and cognitive suite, crucial for an apex predator operating in a three-dimensional, often opaque aquatic environment. The most definitive evidence lies in its cranial anatomy related to echolocation. As a physteroid, it possessed the foundational structures, the spermaceti organ complex and associated nasal passages, the asymmetric cranial fossae and the premaxillary crests, which in modern sperm whales serve as acoustic mirrors, are present in the Leviathan holotype. This implies the capacity for biological sonar, but its specific characteristics and uses may have differed from its modern relative. Modern sperm whales produce the loudest sounds of any animal, clicks exceeding 230 decibels, used for long-range echolocation in the deep ocean, and potentially for stunning giant squid. Leviathan, hunting large vertebrates in what were likely shallower, productive continental shelf waters, may have employed a different acoustic strategy. Its clicks could have been tuned for shorter range, high-resolution imaging to discriminate the detailed anatomy of a whale, locating the heart, lungs, or major blood vessels prior to a targeted strike. Furthermore, the potential for acoustic predation, using intense sound bursts to disorient or injure prey at close quarters, cannot be dismissed. This multimodal sensory approach, combining sonar with vision and possibly other senses, would have provided a significant advantage over a purely visual predator like O. megalodon, especially in turbid water or during nocturnal hunting. The cognitive implications of such a sensory system, and of its likely sociality, are profound. The neuroanatomy of Leviathan can be inferred from endocranial casts based on the internal volume and morphology of the brain case. While its brain was likely smaller relative to body size than that of modern dolphins, it would have been substantial and complex. The necessity for processing high-resolution acoustic data, coordinating complex social hunting strategies, navigating vast oceanographic spaces, and learning intricate predatory techniques from pod mates all point to a high degree of encephalization and behavioral plasticity. The social structure, inferred from the cooperative hunting necessary to tackle the largest prey, suggests the existence of culture, the non-genetic transmission of learned behaviors such as specialized hunting techniques, communication signals, and migratory routes. This social intelligence would have been a critical component of its ecological success, allowing for the efficient exploitation of resources and defense of kills. Thus, Leviathan was not a mere automaton of bite force. It was likely an intelligent, communicative, and socially complex entity. Its world was perceived through a fusion of sound and sight, interpreted by a large brain, and acted upon within a network of cooperative kin. This cognitive dimension adds a crucial layer to our understanding, framing Leviathan not just as a force of nature, but as a sentient participant in the intricate ecological theater of the Miocene seas. The ecological role of Leviathan melville can be most fully comprehended through the lens of trophic dynamics, modeling the flow of energy through the Miocene marine ecosystem and the disproportionate impact of such a hypercarnivore. In modern ecosystems, apex predators exert top-down control, regulating prey populations and maintaining biodiversity. The presence of Leviathan, in conjunction with Otodus megalodon, represents a super predator regime of unprecedented intensity, imposing a unique and severe predatory pressure that fundamentally shaped the evolution and behavior of all subordinate trophic levels. The energy demands of Leviathan were astronomical. Based on allometric scaling of metabolic rates in large marine mammals, a 15-meter, 50-ton individual would have required an estimated 80,000 to 100,000 kilocalories per day. This caloric intake could only be satisfied by the densest energy sources, the lipid-rich blubber and viscera of other marine mammals. A single successful hunt of a medium-sized mysticete whale, yielding several tons of consumable tissue, could sustain a pod for days or weeks, but the search, pursuit, and subduing costs of such hunts were likewise immense. This created a high-risk, high-reward foraging strategy that likely selected for exceptional efficiency in hunting techniques. The ecological footprint of Leviathan extended far beyond direct predation. Its very existence would have induced profound behavioral adaptations in prey species. Mysticete whales may have accelerated their evolutionary trend toward gigantism, as size confers a measure of immunity. A 20-meter whale is simply not a viable target for all but the most determined and coordinated attacks. Furthermore, anti-predator behaviors such as altered migration routes to avoid known predator hotspots, the development of more complex social structures for calf protection, akin to the pod of mothers seen in modern right whales, and even changes in vocalization patterns to avoid acoustic detection by echolocating predators are plausible evolutionary responses. The predatory pressure may also have driven mysticetes to exploit different, perhaps riskier, feeding grounds to avoid areas frequented by Leviathan pods. This predator-mediated habitat selection ripples through the ecosystem, affecting plankton distribution and nutrient cycling. Additionally, Leviathan would have been a prolific creator of carrion. A single kill, especially of the largest whales, would have generated a massive, localized nutrient pulse, a whale fall event. While the primary consumers would be the pod itself, scraps, offal, and eventually the carcass would have supported a vast succession of scavengers, including O-megalodon, large teleost fish, and benthic invertebrates. Thus, Leviathan acted as both a direct regulator of prey populations and an indirect engine of nutrient redistribution, channeling energy from the vast, diffuse planktonic web into concentrated packages that fueled diverse secondary and tertiary consumer communities. This dual role underscores its centrality within the Miocene marine biosphere. It was not merely a terminal consumer, but a keystone species, whose predatory activities structured the entire ecosystem from the top down, influencing the morphology, behavior, and distribution of species across multiple trophic levels in a cascading web of ecological cause and effect. The life history of Leviathan, from neonate to full-grown titan, remains shrouded in inference. Yet critical clues lie in its anatomy and the life strategies of its closest living relatives. As a large K-selected mammal, Leviathan would have exhibited a slow life history. Prolonged gestation, single offspring births, extended maternal care, delayed sexual maturity, and great longevity. Gestation was likely 14–16 months, comparable to the modern sperm whale. The birth of a Leviathan calf, potentially 4 or 5 meters in length, would have been a critical and vulnerable event, necessitating a highly social, protective pod structure. The ontogeny of its most distinctive feature, its dentition, presents a fascinating puzzle. In most toothed whales, teeth erupt well after birth. For a predator whose survival depends on its bite, the development of its armament would have been a key life history milestone. Juvenile Leviathan likely possessed a full set of smaller, but still formidable, teeth. Their diet during this period may have differed from adults, possibly focusing on smaller, more manageable prey like large fish, smaller cetaceans, or pinnipeds, honing their hunting skills under the tutelage of the pod. This period of extended juvenility and learning would have been essential for mastering the complex, coordinated attacks required to tackle giant mysticetes. The wear patterns observed on the holotype teeth are not uniform. They show specific facets indicative of a particular occlusion and repetitive use. This suggests a functional dentition from a relatively young age, subject to continuous stress. Unlike sharks, which shed and replace teeth continuously, Leviathan's permanent dentition had to last a lifetime. This imposed a strict requirement. The teeth and their bony sockets had to withstand decades of immense cyclic loading without catastrophic failure. The microscopic structure of the dentine likely incorporated features like extensive secondary dentine deposition or altered mineralization patterns to resist crack propagation, adaptations seen in other long-lived mammals with high wear dentition. Furthermore, the skull itself underwent significant allometric growth. The massive bony crests and reinforced areas for jaw muscle attachment would have become disproportionately larger as the animal aged, a sign that the predatory niche shifted with size. A subadult Leviathan may have participated in pod hunts as a flanker or distractor, while the largest, oldest males, possessing the most powerful bites and greatest experience, likely delivered the incapacitating strikes. The social implications of this ontogenetic weaponry are significant. The possession of such dangerous armament within a social group necessitates intricate behavioral mechanisms to inhibit intrapod aggression, rituals of submission and dominance that likely relied on posturing, vocalization, and gentle tactile contact, rather than outright combat, which could result in grievous, life-threatening injury. The life of Leviathan, therefore, was one of prolonged apprenticeship, gradual physical maturation into one of nature's most powerful biting instruments, and integration into a complex social fabric where the very tools of predation had to be carefully governed by learned behavior. The ultimate disappearance of Leviathan Melville from the world's oceans was not a singular event, but the culmination of a complex interplay of abiotic and biotic stressors that eroded its ecological niche. The primary catalyst was global climatic deterioration during the Pliocene-Pleistocene transition, approximately 3.5 million years ago. The continued cooling, the intensification of northern hemisphere glaciation, and the associated restructuring of ocean currents fundamentally altered marine productivity patterns. Critical to this was the impact on the coastal upwelling systems, like the Proto-Humboldt Current, that had sustained the dense concentrations of Mysticete whales, Leviathan's primary prey base. Changes in wind patterns and water temperature may have diminished the reliability or shifted the location of these plankton blooms, dispersing the whale aggregations. A more dispersed, less predictable prey field is catastrophic for a specialist predator with high metabolic demands. Concurrently, the Mysticete whales themselves were evolving. Many of the slower, more archaic lineages that may have been preferred prey declined, replaced by more derived, faster swimming and more efficient rorquals Balænopteridae. The evolution of lunge feeding in rorquals allowed them to exploit patchier prey resources more effectively, but also made them faster, more maneuverable, and harder to catch. The prey was, in essence, evolving to escape. This biotic factor intersected with heightened competition. While Otodus megalodon was also in decline, other, more generalist and adaptable predators were radiating. The ancestors of the modern killer whale Orcinus orca were diversifying in the Pliocene. These smaller, highly social and intelligent predators possessed a flexible diet and could switch between hunting fish, seals, and juvenile whales with far greater agility than a giant, specialized macropredator. They could outcompete Leviathan for smaller, more abundant prey items during times of Mysticete scarcity. Furthermore, the social killer whales may have even posed a direct threat to juvenile Leviathans. The final blow was likely demographic. A slow reproducing species with a small population size, dependent on a shrinking resource, becomes exceedingly vulnerable to stochastic environmental perturbations. A series of poor breeding seasons, a disease outbreak, or localized habitat destruction could push an already precarious population past a point of no return. Its specialized morphology, the very source of its dominance, became its Achilles heel in a changing world. The deep-rooted, irreplaceable teeth and immense metabolic overhead were exquisitely adapted to a specific, vanishing ecological context. In contrast, the lineage that led to the modern sperm whale survived by abandoning the hyper-specialized macropredatory niche for a generalist deep-water squid-eating strategy, a niche with a more stable, globally distributed food source. The extinction of Leviathan thus stands as a powerful case study in evolutionary overspecialization and the vulnerability of apex predators to ecosystem-level change. A reminder that even the most formidable creatures are ultimately subject to the immutable laws of ecological thermodynamics and environmental flux. The journey of Leviathan from the realm of myth to a firmly established paleontological entity encapsulates the profound human endeavor to understand the natural world. The name, Leviathan, has echoed through millennia, originating in pre-biblical Canaanite chaos mythology as the sea serpent Litanu, adopted into Hebrew scripture as a symbol of primordial, untamable power, and later allegorized in Christian theology. This mythological construct, a fusion of fear and awe of the deep, found an unexpected and spectacular validation in the Miocene rocks of Peru. The 2010 description of Leviathan Melville did more than name a new species. It bridged a deep cultural and temporal divide, providing a tangible biological reality to a legendary archetype. Scientifically, its impact cannot be overstated. It forced a comprehensive re-evaluation of cetacean evolutionary history, demonstrating that the path to gigantism and apex predation was traversed not just by sharks and reptiles, but by toothed whales as well. It provided the definitive fossil evidence for a raptorial physteroid, resolving long-standing debates about the feeding ecology of ancestral sperm whales. Furthermore, its coexistence with O. megalodon has energized paleoecological studies, modeling species interactions and niche partitioning between super predators in a way no other fossil assemblage permits. For the public, Leviathan has captured the imagination like few other prehistoric creatures, embodying a what-if scenario of nature pushed to its most extreme limits. It features prominently in documentaries, popular literature, and artistic reconstructions, often portrayed as the ultimate marine monster. Yet, its greatest legacy is epistemological. It serves as a humbling reminder of the vast, uncharted chapters in Earth's history, of entire ecosystems and spectacular life forms that have come and gone without witness. Each fossil discovery, like Leviathan, is a fragment of a grander narrative, piecing together the story of life's incredible adaptability and the dynamic, ever-changing nature of our planet. It stands as a monument to scientific inquiry, showing how patient excavation, rigorous analysis, and interdisciplinary synthesis can resurrect a lost world, transforming a symbol of ancient mystery into a detailed, scientifically understood testament to evolution's boundless creative power. The Leviathan is no longer merely a myth of the deep. It is a calibrated point in deep time, a benchmark of paleontological achievement, and an enduring icon of nature's capacity to inspire both awe and understanding. The skeletal remains of Leviathan Melville, while fragmentary, offer potential glimpses into the physical trials of its existence through the emerging field of paleopathology, the study of ancient injury and disease. In the absence of extensive postcranial material, the primary source of such data is the robust skull and dentition. A meticulous examination of these elements can reveal a chronicle of healed trauma, infection, and degenerative, where that speaks to the intense, high-impact lifestyle of this apex predator. The teeth, subjected to immense cyclical stresses, are likely to exhibit microfractures, crazed lines, and substantial apical wear. Such wear patterns are not merely the result of mastication, as in herbivores, but of repeated, forceful impacts against hard biological structures. The ribs, vertebrae, and scapulae of large whales. The enamel, if chipped or fractured, could have led to pulp cavity exposure, inviting catastrophic infection. However, the dentine's structure and potential for secondary deposition might reveal adaptations to seal such breaches, akin to the reparative dentine seen in other large mammals. More telling would be evidence of traumatic injury to the skull itself. The zygomatic arches, the robust cheekbones serving as major muscle anchors, would have been under tremendous strain during biting and potentially during violent encounters with struggling prey. Healed fractures or reactive bone growth in these areas would be direct evidence of survived trauma. Similarly, the mandibular condyles, the pivotal jaw joints, could show signs of osteoarthritis, eburnation, polishing of the articular surfaces, osteophyte bone spur formation, a degenerative consequence of a lifetime transmitting colossal forces. Beyond intraspecific interactions with prey, evidence of interspecific conflict is a tantalizing possibility. The most dramatic paleopathological scenario would be the discovery of a Leviathan bone bearing a deeply embedded Otodus megalodon tooth, or vice versa. While no such definitive evidence has been published, the co-occurrence of these titans makes such encounters plausible. A healed, deep gouge in a rib or vertebra, matching the serration pattern of a megalodon tooth, would constitute a paleontological smoking gun, providing irrefutable proof of violent interaction, likely over a carcass. More subtle pathologies might include signs of osteomyelitis, bone infection, following a deep bite, or avulsion injuries where a tendon or ligament, under extreme load, tore a fragment of bone away from its attachment site. The study of these pathologies does more than catalog ancient suffering. It provides dynamic, individual-level data. A healed fracture indicates not just an injury, but the capacity for healing, suggesting the animal was still able to feed or was supported by its pod during recovery. It transforms the fossil from a static-type specimen into an individual with a biography, a survivor of the relentless physical demands of its niche. These scars of a violent existence, if found and interpreted, would add a profound, visceral dimension to our understanding of Leviathan, painting a picture of a life spent at the razor's edge of biological performance, where every hunt was a potential duel with disaster, and survival was etched in bone. In the murky, blue-filtered light of the Miocene pelagic zone, vision had severe limitations. For Leviathan, the evolution of sophisticated echolocation was not merely an enhancement, but a fundamental prerequisite for its predatory dominance. Its acoustic apparatus, inherited from earlier odontocetes but scaled and potentially specialized, allowed it to carve out a distinct sensory niche within the apex predator guild, differentiating it fundamentally from the chemosensory and vision-reliant Otodus megalodon. The physical basis of this sonar system was the complex nasal complex and the spermaceti organ. The spermaceti, a mixture of wax esters and triglycerides, is housed in a large, case-like structure atop the skull. By modulating blood flow and temperature to this organ, modern sperm whales can alter its density, effectively focusing emitted clicks into a directional beam. The cranial asymmetry in Leviathan, where the right nasal passage is larger and dedicated to sound generation, while the left is smaller and connects to the blowhole, is a hallmark of this advanced echolocation. The acoustic signature of Leviathan would have been a defining feature of its habitat. Its clicks, likely lower in frequency and higher in amplitude than those of smaller dolphins, would have carried for kilometers, capable of imaging large objects like whales at great range. This long-range detection capability would have been critical for locating dispersed prey in the open ocean. However, its acoustic ecology would have been complex and fraught with both opportunity and peril. Echolocation is a two-way street. While Leviathan used it to find prey, potential prey with acute hearing might have detected its approaching sonar pulses and fled. This could have driven an evolutionary arms race in acoustic stealth or countermeasures, perhaps selecting for mysticete whales that vocalized less or used shorter range, lower frequency communication to avoid detection. Furthermore, the acoustic landscape was shared with other echolocating odontocetes, creating a potential cacophony of biological sonar. Leviathan would have needed neural processing power to filter its own returning echoes from this background noise. Intriguingly, its powerful sonar might also have been an offensive weapon. The Big Click hypothesis, proposed for modern sperm whales, suggests they can emit a focused, high-intensity acoustic pulse capable of stunning or disorienting prey. For Leviathan targeting large, sound-sensitive whales, a close-range acoustic blast could disrupt the prey's balance, hearing, or even cause barotrauma, making the subsequent physical attack more effective. This multi-purpose use of sound for navigation, prey detection, prey incapacitation, and intrapod communication established Leviathan as the master of a sensory domain inaccessible to its shark competitor. It operated not just in the physical space of the ocean, but in a richly detailed, self-constructed acoustic map of its surroundings. This sensory supremacy, combined with its physical armament, allowed it to exploit a predatory niche defined by precision strikes on specific, high-value targets in low-visibility conditions, a hunting paradigm that reigned supreme until the very environment that shaped it began to dissolve. Beyond morphology and association, the very chemical composition of Leviathan's fossilized tissues holds encrypted information about its life history, a code decipherable through isotopic biogeochemistry. The analysis of stable isotopes, particularly of carbon delta-3C and nitrogen delta-N, from bioapatite in tooth enamel or dentine, provides a direct, individual-level record of diet and trophic position. Nitrogen isotopes undergo fractionation with each step up the food chain. The consumer's tissues become enriched in the heavier N isotope relative to its diet. Thus, delta N values act as a trophic level indicator. Leviathan, as a hypercarnivore feeding on other high trophic level marine mammals, would be expected to exhibit extremely elevated delta N values, likely among the highest ever measured in a marine vertebrate, providing quantitative confirmation of its apex status. Carbon isotopes, delta-3C, reflect the base of the food web and habitat. Different photosynthetic pathways, C3 versus C4, in primary producers, and gradients between inshore and offshore, or surface and deep water environments, impart distinct delta-3C signatures that propagate up the food chain. Analyzing delta-3C in Leviathan's teeth could test hypotheses about its preferred hunting grounds. A signature consistent with coastal upwelling systems would support the idea of it being a continental shelf predator, while a more pelagic signal might suggest broader roaming. Furthermore, sequential micro-sampling of growth layers within a single tooth, akin to reading tree rings, could reveal an isotopic history over the years of the tooth's formation. This could answer questions about ontogenetic dietary shifts. Did juveniles have lower delta N values, indicating a diet of smaller fish or pinnipeds before graduating to mysticete whales? Did seasonal migrations between different productivity regimes leave an isotopic signature? Another powerful tool is the analysis of trace elements, such as zinc, delta Zn isotopes, which are emerging as a new proxy for trophic level, potentially less complicated by baseline variability than nitrogen. The convergence of multiple isotopic systems on the same specimen would yield a remarkably nuanced paleoecological portrait. Additionally, strontium isotope ratios, SR/SR, which vary with geological age and lithology, could theoretically be used to track movement patterns if incorporated from water into growing teeth, though this is more challenging in marine environments with well-mixed SR reservoirs. The application of these geochemical techniques to Leviathan and its contemporaneous fauna, comparing its isotopes to those of O. megalodon, contemporary mysticetes and pinnipeds, would allow for the empirical reconstruction of the Miocene food web with unprecedented precision. It could definitively place Leviathan at the apex, quantify its trophic separation from megalodon, and reveal whether these giants were targeting the same prey species or partitioning resources by species, age class, or habitat. This chemical evidence, locked within the mineral matrix of its teeth for millions of years, awaits extraction, promising to move the narrative of Leviathan from inference derived from shape to data derived from substance. The extinction of Leviathan melville removed a singularly powerful force from the marine ecosystem, an event that would have triggered a cascade of ecological changes, a phenomenon known as trophic release. The immediate effect would have been a relaxation of the intense top-down predatory pressure on large mysticete whales. Without the constant, specialized threat of a pod of Leviathan capable of killing even healthy adults, the evolutionary and behavioral constraints on these whales would have shifted. This may have allowed mysticetes to exploit richer, but potentially riskier, foraging areas they previously avoided, leading to population increases or expansions in range. The selection pressure for extreme anti-predator gigantism may have lessened slightly, potentially allowing for a greater diversity of mysticete body plans or a shift in life history strategies toward faster growth or reproduction rather than pure size as a defense. The ecological vacancy at the very apex of the food web, however, was not left unfilled for long. The Pliocene witnessed the diversification and rise of other predators, most notably the delphinid lineage that would give rise to the modern killer whale, Orcinus orca. While no single killer whale possessed the physical power of Leviathan, their pack-hunting strategy, intelligence, and adaptability allowed them to become the new dominant predators of marine mammals. Critically, their mode of predation was different. They are pursuit predators and endurance hunters, often exhausting prey rather than dispatching it with a single catastrophic bite. This change in predatory style would have imposed a different suite of selective pressures on whale prey, favoring speed, agility, and shallow water use over sheer mass and armor. The disappearance of Leviathan also altered the carrion cycle. The massive, concentrated nutrient pulses from its kills, which supported a specialized scavenger community including O. megalodon, would have diminished. This could have contributed to the decline of megalodon, which may have relied on such scavenging opportunities as a supplement to its own hunting. The ecosystem's energy flow would have become somewhat less lumpy, more evenly distributed through smaller, more frequent predation and mortality events. The void left by Leviathan, therefore, was not a static emptiness, but a dynamic opportunity that reshaped the evolutionary trajectories of the survivors. It marked the end of an era defined by solitary, bite-force specialized megafaunal predation on whales, and the beginning of a new regime defined by social intelligence, adaptability, and endurance. The modern marine mammalian predator-prey dynamic, centered around the killer whale, is thus built upon the ecological foundation that was cleared in part by the passing of the Leviathan. Its extinction was not merely the loss of a species, but a pivot point in the ecological and evolutionary history of the world's oceans, closing one grand, terrifying chapter and opening another. The discovery of the Leviathan Melville holotype skull was a paleontological event of the highest order, yet its very completeness in one aspect highlights a profound and frustrating gap: the stark absence of associated postcranial skeletons. This disparity is not incidental, but speaks to the complex taphonomic filters that govern fossil preservation, particularly for large marine vertebrates in high-energy coastal environments. The Pisco Formation, while exceptional, imposes its own biases. The processes that allowed for the exquisite preservation of articulated baleen whale skeletons and skulls likely involved rapid burial in fine sediment, often in low oxygen settings. For a massive, buoyant carcass like that of Leviathan, the fate after death followed a predictable, disarticulating sequence. Upon death, the gas-filled body would have floated, subject to oceanic currents and surface scavengers. Sharks, including O. megalodon, would have been primary agents of dismemberment, tearing away limbs and stripping flesh. The heavy, dense skull and mandible, once separated from the vertebral column, would have sunk rapidly to the seafloor, where they could be buried relatively quickly in the diatomaceous ooze. In contrast, the vertebrae, ribs, and limb bones, often less dense and more scattered by scavengers, would have had a lower probability of being preserved in direct association. They may lie elsewhere in the formation, isolated and unrecognized, or may have been destroyed by geological processes. The identification of potential Leviathan postcrania is a significant challenge. Without a clear association, isolated large whale vertebrae or flipper bones from the Miocene of Peru could belong to it, to a contemporary mysticete, or to another large odontocete. Diagnostic features must be sought. For instance, the cervical neck vertebrae of physteroids are typically shortened and fused, providing great stability for the attachment of massive neck muscles required for powerful bites. The discovery of such fused, robust cervical vertebrae of appropriate size would be a strong candidate. Similarly, the scapula, shoulder blade, might show exceptionally large surfaces for the attachment of the musculus pectoralis, the primary muscle powering the flipper, indicative of the powerful maneuvering required during attacks. The quest for these elements is more than an exercise in anatomical completion. It is essential for resolving critical biomechanical and ecological questions. The precise proportions of the flippers would inform swimming style and maneuverability. The size and shape of the vertebral centra would allow for more accurate estimates of total body mass and swimming mechanics. The structure of the ribcage could provide clues to lung volume and diving capacity. Every associated bone would refine the living animal's reconstruction from a skull-centric abstraction into a fully realized, three-dimensional organism. Future discoveries, perhaps of a more complete carcass that sank directly into an anoxic basin without floating, hold the key. Until then, scientists must employ careful comparative anatomy, using the well-known postcranial skeletons of modern sperm whales and other fossil physteroids as a scaffold, interpolating the likely form of Leviathan while acknowledging the persistent ghost of its missing bones, a haunting reminder of the fragmentary nature of the deep time record. The internal cavity of the Leviathan skull holds the mold of a brain that orchestrated one of history's most formidable predators. While no endocast, a natural or virtual cast of the brain case, has been publicly detailed for the holotype, the cranial dimensions allow for reasoned inferences about its neuroanatomy, and by extension, its cognitive capacities. The brain of Leviathan was undoubtedly large in absolute terms, likely comparable in volume to that of a modern sperm whale, the largest brain of any animal, averaging 8,000 cubic centimeters. However, relative to its colossal body size, its encephalization quotient EC, a rough measure of brain size relative to what is expected for an animal of its mass, would have been lower than that of modern dolphins and closer to that of modern great whales. This does not imply simplicity. The structure and regional specialization of the brain are more telling than raw size or EQ alone. As an odontocete, its brain would have possessed the highly convoluted neocortex characteristic of intelligent mammals. Key areas would have been hypertrophied for its specific lifestyle. The auditory processing centers, particularly the inferior colliculi and associated cortical areas, would have been enormous, tasked with decoding the complex stream of returning echoes from its echolocation clicks, constructing a real-time, three-dimensional acoustic image of its surroundings and prey. The olfactory bulbs, in contrast, were likely reduced, as smell is of limited use in the aquatic realm. The cerebellum, responsible for motor coordination and balance, would have been highly developed to manage the precise, powerful movements required for high-speed attacks in a fluid medium. The social intelligence implied by potential cooperative hunting suggests well-developed limbic systems for emotion and social bonding, and frontal regions associated with planning, communication, and impulse control, the latter being critically important for an animal armed with deadly weaponry living in close social groups. The existence of spindle neurons, von Economo-neurons, linked in humans and great apes to complex social emotions, empathy, and intuition, has been discovered in the brains of humpback whales, fin whales, sperm whales, and orcas. It is highly probable Leviathan possessed them as well, suggesting a potential for sophisticated social cognition, including individual recognition, alliance formation, and cultural learning. This neuroanatomical portrait suggests an animal of substantial subjective experience. Its consciousness was likely dominated by a sonic worldview, a mind that perceived pressure changes, water currents, and the skeletal architecture of other creatures through sound. The coordination of pod hunts implies communication, perhaps through complex click codas as seen in sperm whales, used to convey identity, location, and intent. The care required for vulnerable calves points to strong maternal bonds. The Leviathan was not an automaton driven by instinct, but a sentient, social being making decisions in a complex and dangerous world. Its intelligence was not the playful, experimental intelligence of a dolphin, but a focused, pragmatic, and deadly serious intelligence shaped by the evolutionary imperative to locate, outmaneuver, and physically overwhelm the largest animals on Earth. Contemplating its inner world is to grapple with a form of consciousness alien to our own, yet undeniably profound. a mind built for acoustic mastery and cooperative violence, the central processor in history's most potent mammalian predatory entity. The persistent power of the Leviathan myth, long before its paleontological vindication, speaks to a deep-seated psychological and cultural archetype rooted in humanity's relationship with the sea and the unknown. The pre-biblical Canaanite Litanu, the Hebrew Leviathan, the Mesopotamian Tiamat, and the Norse Jörmungandr all represent a primal chaos monster, a serpent or dragon of the deep embodying the uncontrollable, destructive, and awe-inspiring power of the ocean. This archetype fulfills several universal human needs. Firstly, it personifies a profound environmental fear. For ancient coastal and seafaring peoples, the ocean was a realm of mortal danger, storms, waves, and unseen creatures. Conceptualizing these threats as a single, monstrous entity made them comprehensible and provided a focus for ritual and supplication. Secondly, the Leviathan serves as a cosmological counterpoint to order. In creation myths, its defeat or subduing by gods like Baal, Yahweh, or Marduk symbolizes the establishment of cosmic order, cosmos, from chaos, tohu wabohu. It is the other, the primordial foe against which civilization and divine authority are defined. Thirdly, it represents the ultimate test and the limits of human dominion. In the biblical book of Job, God uses the Leviathan to humble Job, illustrating a creature so powerful that only its creator can control it, a lesson in human fragility. The discovery of Leviathan Melville creates a fascinating feedback loop between myth and science. It suggests that the myth may have distant, folkloric roots in human encounters with or knowledge of truly gigantic and terrifying marine creatures. Perhaps exaggerated tales of real whales or serpents passed down through generations, or even the subconscious human recognition of megafauna that coexisted with early humans. The scientific reality of a 60-million-year-old lineage of macropredatory whales, culminating in Leviathan, provides a tangible biological substrate for these ancient fears. It proves that the oceans did once contain monsters of the exact scale and ferocity that the human imagination conceived. This does not validate the mythical details, but it validates the intuitive, almost prophetic, human grasp of Earth's deep-time potential for producing such beings. The modern Leviathan is thus a hybrid entity, part ancient theological symbol, part cultural metaphor for overwhelming power, and part validated scientific fact. It stands as a testament to the strange interplay between human psychology, which projects its fears onto nature, and paleontology, which reveals that nature can indeed produce realities far exceeding those fears. The myth gave the fossil its evocative name. The fossil now gives the myth a stunning, empirical resonance, forever intertwining the symbolic monster of the deep with the very real bone-crushing whale that once ruled it. Despite the wealth of knowledge gleaned from the Leviathan holotype, its story remains provocatively incomplete, charting a course for future paleontological investigation across multiple fronts. The primary and most urgent quest is for more and better material. The discovery of a second, more complete specimen, ideally with associated postcranial elements, is the holy grail. This would resolve debates about body proportions, confirm sociality through multiple individuals preserved together, and potentially preserve stomach contents or pathologies. Systematic, long-term excavation in the Pisco Formation and in correlative deposits worldwide, e.g., Chile, Australia, South Africa, is essential. Beyond new fossils, technological advancements promise fresh insights. High-resolution micro-CT scanning of the existing skull could reveal previously unseen internal structures. The intricate sinus architecture, the paths of nerves and blood vessels, and the detailed morphology of the tooth roots and their sockets. This digital data would enable ever more precise finite element analysis, FEA, to model bite force and skull stress, and computational fluid dynamics, CFD, to simulate swimming efficiency. The application of synchrotron radiation to fossil bone could detect microscopic wear patterns on teeth at the nanoscale, revealing the exact mechanics of tooth on bone contact during feeding. Geochemical techniques, as outlined, await systematic application. Stable isotope analysis, delta 3C, delta N, delta O, delta ZN of Leviathan teeth, and crucially of the teeth of potential prey species from the same strata, will empirically map the Miocene food web. The extraction and sequencing of ancient biomolecules, though a long shot given the age and environment of preservation, remains a theoretical possibility. Even the recovery of fragmented proteins or collagen peptides could provide phylogenetic confirmation or insights into its physiology. Broader evolutionary questions persist. What was the exact phylogenetic relationship between Leviathan and other macroraptorial sperm whales like Acrophyseter and Zygophyseter? Did this lineage arise once or multiple times? How did its biogeographic range shift with changing ocean climates? Furthermore, the ecological modeling of its interactions with O. megalodon requires sophisticated paleoecological simulation software, integrating data on metabolism, prey density, and competitive exclusion to test scenarios of coexistence. Finally, the public and philosophical engagement with Leviathan invites development. As a symbol of both ancient myth and modern science, it is a powerful tool for communicating deep time, evolutionary process, and extinction. Its story challenges us to consider the transient nature of biological supremacy and the fragility of even the most awe-inspiring creatures in the face of planetary change. Leviathan Melville thus remains an open book. Each fossil fragment is a sentence, each isotopic ratio a footnote, each biomechanical model a paragraph in an ongoing narrative. It is a testament to the fact that in paleontology, a single monumental discovery does not close a subject. It opens a vast and fertile field of inquiry, inviting future generations to keep searching, keep analyzing, and keep reimagining the lost world of the ultimate predatory whale. The immense size and hypercarnivorous lifestyle of Leviathan Melville imposed extraordinary physiological demands, necessitating a suite of internal adaptations that, while not preserved directly in the fossil record, can be inferred through comparative physiology and principles of allometric scaling. As a large, endothermic mammal operating in a thermally conductive aquatic medium, thermoregulation was a paramount concern. The blubber layer of Leviathan would have been a critical organ, serving a dual purpose, as an insulating barrier against heat loss and as an immense energy reserve to fuel metabolically expensive hunts and periods of fasting. This blubber would have been considerably thicker and more vascularized than that of a modern filter-feeding whale of similar size, as the active, high-metabolism lifestyle of a predator generates more internal heat. Countercurrent heat exchange systems in the flippers, fluke, and dorsal fin, where arteries are closely bundled with veins, would have been essential to minimize heat loss from these appendages while maintaining core temperature. The challenge of gigantothermy, where large body mass itself helps stabilize internal temperature, was likely balanced against the need to dissipate heat generated during intense muscular exertion. This may have involved specialized vascular networks near the skin surface, particularly around the head and neck, where jaw muscles would have generated tremendous heat during a bite. The cardiovascular system would have been equally monumental. To supply oxygen to such a massive body and power burst speed swimming, the heart of Leviathan was likely proportionally larger than that of a modern baleen whale, possibly exceeding 200 kilograms in mass. It would have been a 4-chambered, high-output pump, with extremely elastic aortic arches to smooth the pulsatile flow and withstand immense systolic pressures. The oxygen-carrying capacity of its blood, determined by red blood cell count and hemoglobin concentration, would have been at the upper limit for mammals, a necessity for deep divees. While not a specialized deep squid hunter like the modern sperm whale, Leviathan certainly engaged in deep, prolonged dives to pursue prey or patrol continental slopes. Its dive physiology would have mirrored that of other deep-diving odontocetes. A profound bradycardia, slowing of the heart rate, peripheral vasoconstriction to shunt blood to the brain and heart, and the collapse of alveoli in the lungs to avoid nitrogen absorption and the bends. The spermaceti organ itself may have played a secondary role in buoyancy control for these dives, as the solidification of the wax with cooling could increase density, aiding descent. The digestive system faced the unique challenge of processing enormous, lipid-rich and bony meals. The stomach of Leviathan was likely multi-chambered, similar to that of modern sperm whales, allowing for the storage and gradual digestion of tons of flesh and blubber. Gastric acid of exceptional potency would have been required to break down bone and cartilage, a physiological trait seen in modern bone-eating predators like hyenas. The intestines, while shorter than those of herbivores, would have been lengthy enough to ensure maximum nutrient absorption from a diet where each meal was a monumental caloric windfall, but separated by potentially long intervals. The liver, a central organ in lipid metabolism, would have been enormous, processing the flood of dietary fats into usable energy and storing vitamins. The very existence of Leviathan at this scale and trophic level is a testament to the successful evolutionary integration of these physiological systems: thermoregulatory, cardiovascular, respiratory, and digestive, into a coherent whole, a biological superstructure that converted the bodies of other giants into the sustenance required to maintain itself as the apex embodiment of mammalian predation in the sea. While the dentition and skull of Leviathan justifiably dominate scientific attention, its hunting success would have been impossible without the sophisticated locomotor apparatus that propelled it and allowed it to maneuver during attacks. The flippers and fluke were not merely passive steering and propulsion devices. They were active, dynamic components of its predatory toolkit, integral to the capture and subduing of massive, powerful prey. The forelimbs, modified into hydrofoil-shaped flippers, retained the skeletal homologies of a terrestrial mammal's arm, but the humerus, radius, ulna, and phalanges were shortened, flattened, and enclosed within a dense connective tissue sheath. The size and bone robustness of the pectoral girdle in the Leviathan holotype, inferred from the scapular sockets on the skull, suggest flippers of immense power and surface area. These flippers served as primary maneuvering surfaces. During a high-speed intercept of a mysticete whale, precise adjustments of the flipper's angle of attack would have enabled rapid turns and rolls, allowing Leviathan to outflank its prey and avoid the dangerous tail fluke. In the final moments of an attack, the flippers could have been used as blunt instruments for striking, or as grappling hooks to cling to the side of a struggling whale, leveraging the predator's body weight to unbalance or drown its victim. The fluke, or tail fin, was the engine of this pursuit. Its morphology, extrapolated from fossil sperm whales and modern analogs, would have been horizontally oriented, massively muscled at its base, and extremely broad. The vertebral column at the caudal peduncle, the tail stalk, would have been exceptionally flexible, allowing for powerful, full-body oscillations. This design is optimized for burst acceleration rather than endurance cruising. Leviathan was likely an ambush or short-range pursuit predator, using its echolocation to position itself advantageously before unleashing a sudden, explosive sprint. The fluke also served as a potent weapon. A direct strike from the tail of a large whale can deliver crippling force. It is plausible that Leviathan used tail slaps to disorient or injure prey prior to closing in for the bite, a behavior observed in modern orcas when hunting large whales. Furthermore, the fluke played a crucial role in the drowning strategy. Once a bite was secured on a flipper or the head of a prey whale, Leviathan and its pod members could use their combined weight and swimming power to drag the victim below the surface, preventing it from breathing. This would have been a coordinated effort of biting, grappling, and forceful propulsion downward, a macabre ballet of drowning executed by tons of mammalian muscle and bone. The integration of this locomotor system with the sensory input from echolocation and the final execution via the jaws represents the pinnacle of predatory adaptation in whales. Every aspect of its appendicular skeleton, from the powerful shoulder joints to the broad fluke blades, was refined by selection to serve the singular goal of delivering that catastrophic bite. The flippers and fluke were the delivery system for its dental armament, making Leviathan not just a biting machine, but a fully integrated, high-performance aquatic pursuit predator. Leviathan melville did not emerge de novo in the Middle Miocene. It was the spectacular culmination of an evolutionary lineage whose earlier chapters remain poorly known, a ghost lineage, hinted at by fragmentary finds and phylogenetic inference. The origin of macroraptorial physteroids lies in the earlier diversification of toothed whales during the Oligocene, following their split from the ancestors of baleen whales. The basal physteroid was likely a medium-sized, generalized predator with heterodont dentition, occupying a niche similar to that of large modern dolphins. The key evolutionary transition was the shift from a piscivorous or teuthophagus squid-eating diet to a focus on tetrapod prey, other marine mammals. This shift required a suite of coordinated adaptations: increased body size, reinforced skull architecture, retention and enlargement of upper teeth, and the development of the spermaceti organ for enhanced sensory or stunning capabilities. Fossils from the late Oligocene and early Miocene provide tantalizing glimpses of this transition. Genera such as Pherocetathodurium from the Caucasus and Diaphorostis from Patagonia show physteroid features, but lack the extreme dental and cranial specializations of Leviathan. A critical window is the early Miocene, where more clearly raptorial forms begin to appear. Acrophyseter from the Middle Miocene of Peru, slightly older than Leviathan, was a smaller but formidable predator, already possessing large, functional upper teeth and a robust skull, indicating the macroraptorial strategy was already established. Another key genus is Brygmophyseter, often synonymized with Scaldistis in older literature. From the Middle Miocene of Japan and the North Atlantic, known from skull and tooth remains that suggest a similar, though possibly less extreme, raptorial ecology. The phylogenetic relationships among these forms are debated. It is unclear whether Leviathan represents the end member of a single, progressive lineage leading from a smaller acrophyseter-like ancestor, or if it was part of a broader, bushy radiation of macroraptorial sperm whales that evolved similar traits in parallel in different ocean basins. The discovery of a late Oligocene or early Miocene fossil with clear, incipient raptorial features would be transformative. Such a specimen would anchor the ghost lineage, showing the primitive condition from which the teeth began to enlarge and the skull began to reinforce. It would also help calibrate the rate of this extraordinary evolutionary arms race. Was the transition to hyperpredation a gradual, steady process over 10 million years? Or was it a rapid, explosive adaptation following a key innovation or ecological opportunity, such as the rise of large, slow-breeding mysticete whales as a stable resource? The ghost lineage of Leviathan thus represents one of the most compelling mysteries in cetacean paleontology. Filling this gap would not only complete the chapter on the world's most fearsome whale, but would provide a classic case study in the evolution of a major adaptive breakthrough: the transformation of a toothed whale from a consumer of fish and squid into the sovereign predator of all other marine mammals. The direct fossil record of Leviathan is, and may always be, limited to skeletal elements. However, the potential exists to trace its ecological impact through indirect evidence preserved in the sedimentary record, ichnofossils or trace fossils. These are the geological records of behavior, and for an apex predator, the most telling would be evidence of its attacks on prey. The search for such evidence is a frontier in Leviathan research. The most promising avenue is the fossilized bones of potential prey items, particularly mysticete whales from the Pisco Formation and contemporaneous deposits. A systematic, forensic analysis of these bones could reveal a signature of Leviathan predation. This would manifest as distinctive bite marks. Given its unique dentition, large, rounded, deeply rooted teeth, the bite marks would differ significantly from the sharp, V-shaped gouges left by shark teeth or the parallel score marks of scavenging crustaceans. A bite from Leviathan would be expected to produce deep, circular or subcircular punctures, often paired from upper and lower teeth, with potential associated crushing or fracturing of the surrounding bone. The spacing between these puncture pairs would correlate with its intertooth distance, providing a biometric fingerprint. Compound fractures of large limb bones or ribs, where the bone is shattered by a focused, blunt force trauma rather than sliced, could also be indicative. Beyond bone damage, another potential ichthyosaur is the death scene. An association of a mysticete whale skeleton with multiple shed Leviathan teeth in the immediate vicinity would strongly suggest predation rather than post-mortem scavenging. While sharks shed teeth frequently during feeding, the permanent dentition of Leviathan makes shed teeth less likely, but a tooth lost during a violent struggle remains a possibility. Furthermore, geochemical evidence could serve as an indirect trace. A bone bed showing an anomalous concentration of phosphates and lipids, the geochemical ghosts of a rotting whale carcass, found in association with Leviathan remains, could paint a picture of a feeding site. The spatial distribution of prey whale fossils could also hold clues. If juvenile or subadult mysticetes are found disproportionately in certain layers or locations, it might indicate preferred hunting grounds or vulnerable demographic targets for Leviathan pods. The study of these indirect traces moves paleoecology from a science of association to a science of interaction. It seeks to capture the moment of predation in the rock record. Finding unambiguous Leviathan bite marks on a contemporaneous whale rib would be a discovery of immense power, a frozen frame of the hunt itself. It would directly link predator and prey in a cause and effect relationship, moving beyond coexistence to documented ecological action. This line of inquiry requires a shift in focus from the spectacular skulls to the more mundane bone beds, employing the meticulous eye of a forensic scientist to read the wounds inflicted 12 million years ago. In doing so, it promises to add a visceral, behavioral dimension to the skeleton, transforming the Leviathan from a static anatomical wonder into an active, hunting historical agent. Its legacy etched not only in its own bones, but in the shattered remains of its victims. The reign of Leviathan Melville was not enacted upon a static oceanic stage. It was profoundly shaped by the dynamic paleoceanographic and climatic conditions of the Middle to late Miocene. Understanding these abiotic factors is crucial to comprehending both its rise to dominance and its eventual demise. The Miocene epoch, 23.5 million years ago, was a period of significant planetary transition, beginning with the Miocene climatic optimum, a warm phase, and culminating in a prolonged cooling trend that established the bipolar icehouse world we inhabit today. For Leviathan, the most critical environmental driver was the configuration of ocean circulation and its impact on biological productivity. During its zenith in the Middle Miocene, the global thermohaline circulation was different from today. The Central American Seaway remained open, allowing direct flow of tropical water between the Atlantic and Pacific, which likely maintained warmer global average sea surface temperatures than present, particularly at mid-latitudes. This warmth supported expansive, nutrient-rich zones. However, the engine of the ecosystem that nurtured Leviathan was the intensification of coastal upwelling systems, particularly along the eastern margins of ocean basins. The Peruvian coast, where the holotype was found, was under the influence of a proto-Humboldt current system. The Andean uplift, ongoing throughout the Cenozoic, created a rain shadow and generated the strong, persistent southeasterly trade winds that drove Ekman transport, pulling deep, cold, nutrient-laden waters to the surface. This process fertilized immense phytoplankton blooms, forming the base of a short, efficient food web. Diatom's right arrow zooplankton, like krill right arrow small fish, and direct consumption by baleen whales. This concentrated biomass created oases of productivity in the pelagic desert, aggregating the mysticete whales that were Leviathan's primary prey. Sea level was generally higher than today, flooding continental shelves and creating extensive shallow epicontinental seas that could have served as both productive feeding grounds and potential nursery areas for prey, and by extension, hunting grounds for predators. The chemical composition of the ocean also differed. Magnesium-calcium ratios favored the precipitation of calcite over aragonite, which may have influenced the skeletal mineralogy of marine organisms, though its direct impact on Leviathan is unclear. More significant was oceanic dissolved oxygen content. The upwelling of deep water, while nutrient-rich, can sometimes be oxygen-poor. The adaptation of Leviathan and its prey to periodic hypoxic conditions in these highly productive zones is a subject for speculation, but highlights the challenging and dynamic nature of its environment. The gradual cooling towards the late Miocene, driven by declining atmospheric CO2 levels and the expansion of Antarctic ice sheets, began to alter this stage. Cooling sea surface temperatures may have shifted the latitudinal ranges of plankton communities and the whales that followed them. Perhaps most critically, the ongoing tectonic changes, culminating in the closure of the Central American Seaway in the Pliocene, dramatically reshuffled global heat and nutrient distribution. This closure strengthened the Gulf Stream, potentially altering upwelling patterns elsewhere and disrupting the stable, localized productivity regimes upon which Leviathan's specialized, high-yield hunting strategy depended. Thus, the paleoceanographic context provides the essential backdrop. Leviathan was a creature of its specific moment in Earth's history, a product of a warm world with strong, reliable upwelling systems that gathered immense prey biomass into targetable concentrations. When that oceanic stage was gradually rearranged by the forces of plate tectonics and climate change, the script for its survival became untenable, and the curtain fell on its ecological drama. The formidable weaponry of Leviathan implies a sophisticated social structure, for such power within a species necessitates mechanisms to mitigate fatal entry-specific conflict and to coordinate its application for hunting. While direct fossil evidence of social behavior is elusive, a synthesis of ontogenetic patterns, phylogenetic bracketing, and ecological necessity allows for a robust inference of its pod dynamics. Starting with the vulnerable neonate and juvenile stages, the extended period of maternal dependency, a hallmark of large cetaceans, would have been paramount. A Leviathan calf born at roughly 1/3 of maternal length was ill-equipped with its developing dentition and unhoned skills to survive alone. This necessitates a matrifocal social unit, the core of the pod, comprised of adult females and their offspring of various ages. Such groups provide communal calf protection, a pod of mothers that could collectively defend young from threats, including other predatory whales or sharks. As juveniles matured, their integration into the hunting collective would have been gradual, following a likely age-graded curriculum. Subadults may have initially taken roles as herders or drivers in cooperative hunts, using their bodies and acoustic signals to corral prey whales towards the more experienced dominant females who would deliver the disabling bites. This period of apprenticeship is critical for learning the complex, culturally transmitted techniques of hunting large, dangerous prey, knowing which species to target, where to strike, and how to coordinate with pod mates. The ontogeny of the dentition supports this. As the jaws and teeth reached their full, devastating potential in late adolescence, so too would the individual's role in the hunt transition to that of a primary attacker. The role of adult males within this social structure is more ambiguous to fully contextualize the singular nature of Leviathan melville. a rigorous comparative osteological analysis against other marine apex predators, both extant and extinct, is essential. This comparison moves beyond simple metrics of size to evaluate the functional morphology of predation across evolutionary lineages. The primary axes of comparison are dentition, skull biomechanics, and locomotor apparatus. When placed alongside Otodus megalodon, the contrast is stark and illustrative of divergent evolutionary solutions to the same ecological problem. Megalodon's weapon was the serrated, triangular tooth, a blade optimized for slicing through flesh and blubber, generating devastating hemorrhage. Its skull, while cartilaginous and thus poorly fossilized, was likely a kinetic mechanism for wide gape ingestion and powerful shearing motions. Leviathan, in contrast, wielded a battery of massive, conical teeth designed for deep puncture and bone crushing, with a skull engineered as a static, immensely robust vault for anchoring the muscles of a vice-like grip. This represents a fundamental dichotomy: the shark as a slicer and bleeder, the whale as a crusher and disabler. Comparing Leviathan to the largest macrophagous reptiles further highlights its uniqueness. The late Cretaceous mosasaur Mosasaurus hoffmanni possessed robust, conical teeth reminiscent of Leviathan's, but its skull was constructed for lateral flexibility and rapid jaw closure in a snap and swallow mode, suited for smaller, agile prey relative to its size. The pliosaur Pliosaurus funke, Predator X, had a massive, elongated skull with immense conical teeth, delivering a bite force potentially rivaling Leviathan's. However, the pliosaur's neck was short and powerfully muscled, suggesting a different attack strategy, perhaps a rapid lunge from ambush, and its limb-based propulsion system, 4 large flippers, differed fundamentally from the cetacean tail-driven system. Leviathan thus combines the bone-crushing dentition of a giant pliosaur with the sophisticated neurocranium and echolocation of an odontocete, a hybrid of reptilian brute force and mammalian sensory intelligence. Among extant predators, the killer whale Orcinus orca is the most pertinent analog, yet the osteological differences are profound. The orca's teeth are numerous, smaller and conical, suited for grasping and tearing, but not for the focused, catastrophic bone failure Leviathan could inflict. The orca skull is more gracile, reflecting a hunting strategy that employs endurance, cooperation, and the exhaustion of prey, rather than instantaneous incapacitation via trauma. The modern sperm whale, Physter macrocephalus, shares Leviathan's basic physteroid architecture, but demonstrates the radical evolutionary shift to suction feeding on squid. Its upper teeth are vestigial, its lower teeth non-occluding, and its skull is more pneumatized and less optimized for resisting high bite forces. This comparative osteology establishes Leviathan not as a mere big sperm whale, but as a morphotype without parallel, a unique convergence of attributes that placed it at the apex of a specific predatory strategy. The precise, brutal, and rapid neutralization of the most formidable prey the oceans have ever produced. Reconstructing the sensory environment of the Miocene seas requires imagining an acoustic landscape, or soundscape, profoundly shaped by the presence of Leviathan and its contemporaries. This was not a silent world, but a realm alive with biological sound, overlaid upon the geophysical noise of waves, currents, and earthquakes. Leviathan itself was a major acoustic actor. Its echolocation clicks, likely low frequency, below 10 kHz, an extremely high amplitude to achieve long-range detection of whale-sized targets, would have periodically punctuated the deep sound channel, carrying for tens or even hundreds of kilometers. These probing searchlights of sound were not just tools for the emitter. They were signals detectable by all organisms with hearing. Prey whales, possessing acute low-frequency hearing for communication, may have evolved behavioral responses to these distinctive predator clicks, initiating flight, forming defensive circles, or falling silent. The soundscape was also filled by the vocalizations of mysticete whales. While the complex songs of modern baleen whales are a more recent evolutionary innovation, Miocene mysticetes certainly communicated. Their vocalizations would have been lower frequency, simpler moans and pulses, used for maintaining contact, coordinating group movement, and perhaps signaling alarm. The aggregation of many such whales in productive upwelling zones would have created localized choruses, acoustic beacons that may have ironically guided predators like Leviathan to their prey. Furthermore, the other super predator, Otodus megalodon, while not a vocalizer, would have contributed to the soundscape through the violent thrashing of its attacks and the crunching of bone, acoustic events that may have attracted scavengers and competitors. This complex acoustic milieu had evolutionary consequences. It likely drove an arms race in auditory sensitivity and signal processing. Prey species may have tuned their hearing to better detect the specific frequencies of predator clicks, while predators like Leviathan may have refined their click structure for greater directionality or stealth. The potential for acoustic interference was significant. The clicks of multiple Leviathan pods hunting in the same area, or the low-frequency rumble of a mysticete herd, could have created a masking noise, challenging the predator's ability to resolve its own echoes. This would have selected for advanced neural filtering capabilities. The Miocene soundscape, therefore, was a dynamic, information-rich environment where sound was a medium for both predation and survival. Leviathan did not merely exist in this soundscape. It helped define it, its powerful biosonar acting as both a keystone sensory modality for itself and a pervasive selective pressure on the auditory ecology of every other sound-sensitive creature sharing its world. The void within the braincase of Leviathan holds the ghost of its mind. While no natural endocast has been reported, the internal table of the skull contains the negative impression of the brain's outer surface, potentially recoverable through high-resolution CT scanning. This digital endocast would reveal the external morphology of the brain, allowing for comparative paleoneurological analysis. Key features would include the overall size and shape, the pattern of gyri and sulci, brain folds, and the relative development of major regions. As a physteroid, the endocast would show the pronounced temporal foci for the massive jaw muscles impinging on the braincase, likely compressing the lateral aspects of the cerebrum. The olfactory bulbs would be expected to be small, reflecting the reduced importance of smell. The most prominent features would relate to its acoustic lifestyle. The petrosal bones, which house the inner ear, would be large, indicating well-developed auditory senses. More importantly, the cranial endocast might show impressions of the bony falx and tentorium, membranes that partition the brain, and the relative size of the cerebellar lobes, crucial for coordinated movement. Comparative analysis with modern odontocetes endocasts would be revealing. Modern sperm whale brains, while enormous, have a relatively low encephalization quotient and a somewhat simplified gyral pattern compared to smaller, more socially complex dolphins. However, they possess massively developed auditory processing regions. Leviathan's endocast might show a similar pattern, a brain large in absolute terms, but with a morphology emphasizing sensory motor integration for predation over the hyper-developed association cortices seen in highly social delphinids. Areas like the primary somatosensory cortex, mapping sensation from the jaws and face, would likely be expanded. The cerebellum, governing fine motor control of the flukes and flippers during high-speed pursuits, would be substantial. Crucially, endocranial morphology can also hint at social behavior. The degree of development in the frontal and limbic regions, associated with executive function and emotion in mammals, might be inferred. While not definitive, a more convoluted frontal lobe could support the complex social planning and inhibition required for cooperative hunting and intrapod harmony. The discovery and analysis of a Leviathan endocast would thus be a landmark, transitioning our understanding from speculative inference about its intelligence to empirical data on its neural architecture. It would allow us to ask not just, how big was its brain, but how was its brain organized for its specific, terrifying way of life? This would provide the ultimate osteological key to its behavior, revealing the neuroanatomical blueprint of the most powerful predatory mammal in Earth's history. Since its formal description in 2010, Leviathan Melville has transcended its status as a paleontological specimen to become a cultural and scientific icon. Its appeal is multifaceted, rooted in its inherent superlatives and its resonance with deep-seated human narratives. Scientifically, it represents a paradigm-shifting discovery. It forced a rewrite of cetacean evolutionary textbooks, provided the definitive evidence for macroraptorial sperm whales, and created a new benchmark for vertebrate bite force and predatory specialization. It is a cornerstone specimen for the Pisco Formation Lagerstätte, a star exhibit that draws research interest to the entire ecosystem. For paleontologists, it is a gift that keeps giving, its incomplete skeleton posing a constant, tantalizing series of questions that drive field work, methodological innovation, and interdisciplinary collaboration. In the public sphere, Leviathan has captured the imagination with unprecedented vigor. It perfectly fits the archetype of the sea monster, but with the legitimizing stamp of science. Its name, blending biblical myth and literary classicism, grants it instant recognizability and gravitas. Popular media, from documentaries to video games, have embraced it as the ultimate prehistoric predator, often portrayed in dramatic confrontation with Otodus megalodon, a matchup that, while plausible, taps into a primal fascination with gladiatorial clashes of titans. This public fascination is not trivial. It drives engagement with science, funding for research, and a broader appreciation for deep time and evolutionary history. Beyond spectacle, Leviathan serves as a powerful metaphor and a cautionary tale. It is a symbol of evolution's capacity for extreme and awe-inspiring innovation. It also stands as a monument to extinction, a reminder that even the most powerful and specialized creatures are vulnerable to planetary change. A poignant lesson in the context of the modern biodiversity crisis. The Leviathan has thus completed a remarkable journey, from a mythic symbol of chaos, to a forgotten possibility in deep time, to a rigorously studied fossil, and finally to a modern icon that bridges scientific understanding and public wonder. It endures not just in the mineralized bone of the Peruvian desert, but in the human mind, as a permanent testament to the grandeur, violence, and sublime creativity of the natural world. Its story is a compelling narrative of discovery, reminding us that the Earth still holds fossils that can fundamentally reshape our view of life's history, and that the most legendary monsters may yet be found, not in the pages of scripture, but in the stratified stone of our planet. The comprehensive scientific narrative of Leviathan Melville culminates in a profound synthesis. This creature was not an anomaly, but the logical apex expression of a unique confluence of biological, geological, and climatic circumstances during the Middle to Late Miocene. It represented the pinnacle of a specific evolutionary pathway, the macroraptorial odontocete, a pathway that flourished in a world of abundant, colossal prey and stable, productive oceanographic regimes. Its anatomy was a masterwork of integrated adaptations. A skull transformed into a biomechanical fortress for transmitting unparalleled bite force. Dentition repurposed from grasping tools to bone-crushing hydraulic rams. A sensory system dominated by biological sonar, capable of painting detailed acoustic portraits of prey in the deep's darkness. A physiology scaled to the demands of an endothermic hypercarnivore, and a social intelligence necessary to wield such physical power safely and effectively within a cooperative group. Leviathan was, in essence, the ultimate biological weapon system, a fusion of mammalian metabolic intensity, cetacean aquatic mastery, and a predatory focus so absolute it has never been replicated. Its ecological role was equally extreme. As a super predator, it exerted a top-down control that shaped the evolution, behavior, and distribution of the entire Mysticete whale fauna. Its coexistence with Otodus megalodon presents one of paleoecology's most fascinating case studies in niche partitioning between sympatric titans, likely resolved through divergent attack strategies, sensory modalities, and prey selectivity. The ecosystem it dominated was a product of its time. Warm, nutrient-rich Miocene seas, where vigorous upwelling along continental margins condensed the ocean's diffuse energy into dense, exploitable pockets of whale biomass. Leviathan was both a product and a ruler of this specific environmental configuration. Part XXXIV. The unanswered questions and the call to discovery. For all we have gleaned, the story of the Leviathan remains tantalizingly incomplete, its full biography etched in stone yet to be fully translated. The most pressing unknowns are empirical. Where are the postcranial remains, the vertebrae that articulated its power, the flippers that steered its charge, the ribs that protected its vital core? The discovery of a more complete skeleton is the paramount objective, a find that would solidify our biomechanical models and flesh out the living animal. The ontogenetic series is a ghost. We possess the adult terror, but lack the juvenile forms that would reveal its growth and the development of its fearsome armament. direct evidence of its behavior, bite marks on prey bones, a fossilized death scene with a victim, evidence of pod composition, remains elusive, locking its most dramatic life events behind a veil of inference. Technological and analytical frontiers beckon. High-resolution geochemical analysis of its dentine could reveal lifetime dietary and migratory records. Advanced computational fluid dynamics could model its swimming efficiency and attack speed. Paleoneurological study of its endocranial space could map the very organ of its command. Furthermore, the broader phylogenetic picture is unclear. The exact lineage leading to Leviathan, the timing of its divergence from the squid-eating sperm whale line, and the possible existence of even larger or more specialized relatives are questions awaiting new fossil discoveries. Each of these unknowns is not a conclusion but a beginning, a hypothesis waiting for evidence, a mystery inviting a new generation of scientists to the field, the laboratory, and the scanner. Part XXXV. Epilogue. A legacy in stone and mind. Leviathan Melville endures with a dual legacy. In stone, it is a collection of fossils, a monumental skull, isolated teeth, a holotype that anchors a species. It is a data point in the history of life, a definitive proof that the oceans once harbored a toothed whale that preyed upon the largest creatures of its time with ruthless, specialized efficiency. Its extinction marks a definitive end to this particular experiment in megafaunal predation, a chapter closed by the shifting currents and cooling climates of a changing planet. In the mind, however, its legacy is expansive and enduring. It is the definitive scientific Leviathan, having subsumed the myth into a richer, evidence-based reality. It stands as an icon of evolutionary possibility, demonstrating that nature's creativity can fashion realities as astonishing as any fiction. It serves as a humbling reminder of life's transience, that even the most dominant forms are contingent upon a fragile alignment of environmental circumstances. And finally, it embodies the spirit of scientific discovery itself, the patient excavation of truth from rock, the synthesis of anatomy, ecology, and geology into a coherent narrative, and the thrilling realization that our planet's past contains stories more incredible than we had dared to imagine. The Leviathan is no longer a shadow in the deep or a metaphor in a text. It is a known quantity, a measured terror, a resurrected monarch from a lost world. Its final lesson is that the pursuit of understanding, driven by curiosity and rigorous inquiry, can conquer even the greatest of primordial fears, replacing myth with something far more powerful: the sublime and intricate truth of Earth's deep history. The hunt for understanding, like the hunt of the Leviathan itself, is complete only when the last echo of inquiry has been resolved into the clear, hard shape of knowledge. That pursuit continues, with the Leviathan now guiding us, a colossal beacon from the Miocene, illuminating the profound and endless wonders of the prehistoric sea.